Hear me now? Ah, there we go. For some reason, my testing. Can you guys hear me now? Yeah. Ah, there we go. For some reason, what? Testing. You guys hear me now? Yeah. Ah, there we go. Unmute. Ah, What's it say? Can you guys hear me now? Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Anybody, anybody? On mute. What's it say? Can you guys hear me now? All right, it should be working now. Anybody, anybody? Hello, hello. Yes. All right. All right. I apologize for that. I did a whole bunch of setup beforehand, and apparently there's a tiny little mute button on the side here that I missed. Okay. All right. One more time, everybody. All right. You hear me? Okay. Sounds looking good. We can go get started right now. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to this meetup, this virtual meetup. I used to run some meetup group before COVID. This is sort of my first time rebooting it post COVID in the midst of this wonderful AI evolution that we're going through right now. So I thought I would go ahead, since I find myself so interested in it, that I would start this meetup where we can all collaborate. I call it Vibe Code Circle because it's a collaboration group. We can all learn together. I can share, the practices that I've learned and the tools. And I've been in IT for a long time, essentially my whole adult career, many, many years. And I'm also going to be, providing resources and sharing, tools that we can use to try to learn and perfect our craft. And if you're here and you're like, but I'm not a software engineer, maybe you are a software engineer. But the thing that's awesome about AI and prompt engineering is it's not just for writing software. It's for writing content. It's for improving content. It's for collaboration. There's just so many uses for it. So thanks for coming along with me on this journey. And so you literally can use it for almost everything. This presentation I'm going to use today was literally vibe coded. This is, I used a HTML format to format the presentation. And today we're going to be talking about modern website builders. I'll go over a handful of them. I'm going to be talking mostly the ones that do let you toggle between, messing with visual elements in a GUI screen, a WYSIWYG screen, and also looking at the code and modifying the code in the background, because those are the most powerful. They let you do everything from web pages all the way up to applications and everything along the spectrum in between, and integrating with other things. So first, I'm going to do a high-level overview of AI builders. Today, like I said, I'm covering the virtual ones, the ones that are online, and then in a future one, I'll cover tools that you use on your desktop for writing code using AI. I'll talk about some of the core principles that I use and a lot of people use for prompting, and the language of web applications. If you're building a website, what is the language that you use? Like any other specialty, there is a specific language to describe different parts of a website. And I'll talk about prompting terms you can use that are very powerful, that make sure that what you have in your head, the idea that you have, is what winds up in the final product, or you can work your way towards that by using some of these powerful words. And I'm going to set up a website for us. You'll see the demo here today was me vibe coding for some ideas for standing up a website, an online forum where we can share things if we need to share files, or if we want to share news and things like that. So, all right. Next, so who am I? My name is Trevor Lowing. I'm a software engineer, but right now I'm mostly working in like the cyber realm. But I'm very passionate about like connecting people with technology, like coding. I've done since high school, and I lucked out, and for a large part of my career, I've gotten to do it. It's the closest thing I think to wizardry there is. You can take something in your head and create something in the real world that other people can use. That's really for me, I'm not an artist, but like that's the closest to art I'll ever get. Um, and like I said, we're going to stand up an online community at vibecodecircle.com. That's underway. You'll see some the core kernel parts of that today as we're doing that. And we can all support each other in this great community. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to draw a distinction here between online builders, is essentially builders that run inside of a web browser, and then local integrated development environments. And there's pros and cons of each. The pros, some of the big pros with online builders are when you pretty much go into it, it's ready to go. You don't have to update dependencies. You don't have to configure much of anything. It's pretty much ready to go to start building off the scratch. If you want to do something like a deployment or collaborate with people, it's designed to do that. It's on the web, so you can share the activity with other people if you want to do group design. They're also great for rapid prototyping. If you need to get from zero to an idea or something to present to a customer, or just to have something tangible to look at as you're moving down the path towards what you finally want to accomplish, it's really great for that kind of prototyping. Limitations, you're sort of stuck with whatever the company puts into the platform. Sometimes they try to lock you into the platform. Luckily, so far, it's not horrible. Most of them do kind of let you move your code out into other places or push it into places like GitHub, where you can sync it with other locations. And it could be slower for complex tasks. If you have a lot of files and in a project online, you're probably not going to see it work as well as on the local file system. And then IDEs, most of the most popular AI coding integrated development environments are forks of Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And so in a future one, I'll show you, a handful of those. They look similar, but some of them are better at other things than others. And if you're going to write like a heavy app, or if you're going to write like a heavy web app, it might be a better approach, at least at some point. You might start off on the web, then move the code down on your desktop and start working on the heavier parts of the application. And it usually requires a lot more setup. Like you've got a lot of configurations, if you're using, MCP, there's just a lot of things that you got to monkey with to really set up an environment to be productive. Okay, so this is a list of the popular website builders out there. You got Lovable, which is really popular, it's been in the news this week. You got Bolt.new, has been around in a while. I think that's probably one of the early ones to really, along with Vercel v0, to get early notoriety, kind of coming from nowhere, especially Bolt, and overnight becoming a really popular platform for doing development. Replete, unfortunately, had some bad news over the weekend. Apparently, they accidentally deleted somebody's production code, or the AI did. And that's like a lesson that everybody has to learn, is backup, backup, backup. Always make copies of everything you do. I am ultra paranoid. Whatever tool you use, you're usually going to want to connect it to GitHub so that you can synchronize and have versioned copies of your project, and you can restore it if you need to. It's just like it's a painful lesson the first time you have to learn it. It's sad that somebody had to. Base 44, I haven't really monkeyed around with too much. I think I did 4 or 5 of these today that I'm going to show you. And then there's this one called EasySite, or EasySite.ai. It's my personal favorite right now. It is a tiny company. They are kind of really punching above their weight quite a bit. Sort of the dirty truth is, for all of these tools, they don't usually make the large language models that are doing the grunt work in the background. They're sort of like a tooling overlay on top of that, and then they fine-tune aspects of it, and maybe they do create some small language models that help them stand out from their competitors. But I really like EasySite. The other thing that's nice about EasySite, I'll share later, is they've got right now like a lifetime deal. Most of these tools, you can, or some of them, you can have the option of using the tool and paying just a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, and they give you a certain amount of AI tokens to use. to do your work. When you run out, you run out. But some of them allow what's called bring your own key. So you can go out to Anthropic or OpenRouter, and you can configure the system to use those when your credits run out, so you can keep doing work. And all right, so anyhow, if you're not familiar with software development, the life cycle of an application or a website has a lot of moving parts. So when you see the HTML on the front end, that's part of it. The more features that you add to a website, especially if there's a back end to go with that front end for like customer relation management, where you're collecting emails and sending out newsletters. Maybe you actually have some sort of an application running there. The more complex it is, the more you have to learn about the ecosystem of lifecycle management. So we talked about the browser-based IDE. I briefly talked about GitHub integration, which is a version control system, an online version control system owned and run by Microsoft. It's really great, free to use. They do have enterprise plans where you can have more advanced features, but for the rest of us, it's pretty much free. You have automated builds, like folks. There's if you're familiar with Cloudflare. Cloudflare is really great about having automated pipelines for deploying your software. For the stuff we're doing today, that's really not going to come into play. That's really for something probably more advanced than that. Or if you do wind up, say, developing it on one platform, pushing it to GitHub, and then having it automatically deploy when you're ready to your production environment elsewhere on the web. So you might host it one place and do the development work in a different place. And as I mentioned earlier, real-time collaboration. If you want to be able to do something, you have say you work at a small organization and you have non-technical folks that are providing feedback on whether the site looks and behaves like they want it to, and then whoever's the AI coder is the one actually entering the prompts. You can do that. A lot of them have collaborations or team type features to them. Especially as they advance. Then they have monitoring and logs. Once you've deployed your software, you need to make sure it's running right. If you work within a compliance regime, you might have a requirement to log certain actions that happen. And for security, if you need to be able to, something goes wrong, either for performance or security, and you need to be able to review logs and find out what happened so you can fix it. A lot of systems will have that feature, or you can connect to it. Next week, I'm doing a meetup on Supabase, which I'll describe it more then, but it's sort of a platform that for sort of back-end type activities, and that would have a lot more like logging type activities if you're in a database and some of the other features that they have there. And then you have like source export and forking. Forking is more advanced if you want to transfer projects between users and platforms. And I lay out some of the benefits here. You want browser-based ID, maximum accessibility, teamwork. Online things are just really great ways, and it sort of reduces your risk. If the thing you're trying to do is create a website or a web application, every minute you don't spend dorking around, with the tooling to get the work done is a minute saved. And eventually maybe you get more advanced, you get more resources, you can have dedicated people and dedicated roles to handle some of these more advanced things. But it's something to be aware of depending on where you are on that spectrum. Hey, Clifton C, WordPress and AI. Hey, all right, now that I know there's somebody else that's cool with WordPress and AI, we're going to be doing one on that because I'm a big old WordPress nerd. So building a website versus building a web application, it's a spectrum. So like a static web page that literally does nothing but present content is definitely what I would call a website. But, say you add a login, say you add the ability for somebody to, sign up for a newsletter. The more, I think, features like that you add, eventually it becomes more like a web application. Some of the more advanced web applications are like Microsoft Office. A lot of people use that. This week, there's an IPO for one called Figma. Adobe's another one. They have a lot of online applications, and they're far more advanced. And so you probably want to look at the right tool for the right job at some point. So if you're starting with a minimum viable product for a web application or a website, online, definitely the way to start. Yeah, where you have something workable and ready to go in a short period of time to show your stakeholders or prove out your idea. And then as it gets more complicated, maybe you move it more into the web application paradigm. All right, so what are some popular use cases for website builders? So you want to put on your personal portfolio. I did this the other day. I took my resume and I threw it into the AI and just told it, make me a website, out of my resume. And it was pretty slick. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. Just one of those things. Like a long time ago, I got my domain name as my name, and I hadn't done anything with it. And in a matter of minutes, it let me put my resume up there, for better or worse. It could be a business site if you want to have an online presence for your business. That's huge nowadays to draw customers. People don't look at the yellow pages anymore. They're going to get out there and they're going to Google. They'll pull up a Google search, and if yours is the one in the top few that pop up, your chances of getting that business are a lot higher. You might have an online store to sell something, equivalent like your Etsy's and stuff like that. You might have a nonprofit page if you run a nonprofit or a church or something like that. It might be an event page if you want to manage like registrations. Might be a blog or a magazine. That's a really popular one. WordPress is like 43% of the web. It's massive. All kinds of people doing that. As I mentioned, a landing page just to have a presence for marketing or to generate leads. You might have a SaaS application to offer, the software as a service. Might be a community forum. I'm working on standing up one of those for us in WordPress that we can, share. Like I said, share files, do more advanced things that we can't just do in an online meeting. Could have a course hub. You have a learning management systems. There's just a ton of really great learning management systems out there. Where again, you just focus on the content for the learning, the videos and the training materials and, the slides, and these learning management systems provide all the surrounding stuff so that you can host your classes, you can charge a fee if you need to charge a fee. And then you got, an internal dashboard. You might have a back-end administrative interface. You might have information that you're collecting, say on a search engine. Is the recording going to be on YouTube? Yes, it will. Well, as long as I don't mess it up. I'm using Restream, and I tested it. I should be able to put it up afterwards. I'll chop off the part up in front where I messed up the audio for a minute. And then you might have a booking site. That's another popular thing. If you have any place that does reservations, any place where you rent, bookings, great for that. All right, so now we're going to get into the prompting part of this. So I'm going to bore you up front with some slides. We'll get to the eye candy in a minute, and we'll start to play with some things online. But I just want to sort of set some basic, ground truths to sort of understand, like, what are we doing and why are we doing it, and what's a good approach to do it so that you can, complete your work quickly and have good results. So, the first principle I always think about is alignment, right? So any good design is going to start out with a really clear purpose. What it is you want to do, who's your customer, and then everything flows from that. If you want to start a hair care business and your whole thing is just about drawing in new customers, you can completely tailor a site using one of these tools to doing that. And once you understand the language of what the components of a website do to get to your goal, you'll better understand how to tell the LLM or to prompt the LLM to produce an output to do the same. And then strategic alignment, so there's going to be all the components riding on a page, and we get some understanding around what's their purpose and what's the business objectives behind them. Obviously, if you surf the web, you realize there's a lot of sort of patterns. The patterns to how people build web pages. Some are the more successful one. It's almost Darwinian. The more successful ones wind up being repeated and best practices, and the language models when they're built, they see those patterns, and then so when you ask for something, with the intended purpose, it produces you something based on what it learned. All right, so what's effective AI prompting? Um, I sort of look at it as like you have great flexibility. You can provide it a little bit of information about what you want and leave it very broad, and AI has a good chance of getting you something very workable. But the more context that you can provide, the more information telling you what you want, why you want it, what's the goal, the more likely you are to really have something that performs well doing what you want it to do. So, like here, so you specify the intent. So, what's the goal of the page? Who's the audience? Who's for? Who are you trying to get to interact with the page? If you want to, and if there's specific components that you want on your page, tell it. Like if you want a newsletter sign up, you tell it with your prompt and it'll add it. You can specify a visual style. What should it look or feel like? And I'll go over some keywords, just a few keywords that you'll start to understand what I mean when I say that. And then interaction. So how should it work? You can literally tell it, I want it to click on A and I want B action to happen, and it'll do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about components here. So this is the language of how web pages are built. And so, as I mentioned, you have the strategy. You want to match the user intent. You want to prioritize key actions. So you position the critical components in high visibility areas. Whenever you look at a web page, when you're doing this sort of design, what catches your eye? When you want to see good pages, see what catches your eye. Is it the site too busy? Is it not busy enough? What visual elements do your eyes fall on? What does it make you think? All those things are very intentional, especially for well-designed pages. Everything's there for a purpose, and so you really want to maximize that, to produce the best outcome. And you want to maintain a visual hierarchy. You sort of guide them through the content with sizing and placement. It's almost like an art thing, but you'll see as I show you the patterns in a minute. You'll begin to see what I'm talking about. So you want certain visual elements to stay the same across page to page. What you don't want to do, if you really want a page that drives business, you don't want to confuse your customers. You don't want them to have to hunt around. I mean, we've all done it. We've been on a website and you're like, I know there's a login button here somewhere. I just can't remember where it is. And it's a really bad problem. Like there's a lot of websites I go to and I'm like, I got to look at the search history and try to figure out, was it app.domainname.com or domainname.com/app or domainname.com/login, because I can't see a visual element that tells me where to log in. You shouldn't design your page that way. You want a consistent experience. You want to, meet expectations to a degree, to try to make that easier for the user to interact and have a pleasant experience. You don't want to be overly dense with the content, but sometimes you do. I mean, it really depends on what the intent of the page is. Some types of pages, maybe you do, maybe you want, like, say it's a developer resource. Oh, what is vibe coding? Well, that's interesting. That is a pretty nebulous thing. What is vibe coding? I would say it's using large language models to develop code for folks that aren't necessarily software engineers and are more spending time about what they want than focused on writing the code to get it. I'll do a slide on my next one. If you're confused about vibe coding, it's very much a nebulous thing. It's sort of in the mind's eye of how you want to do it. For me, vibe coding is art. When I was a kid, I could never draw a straight line to save my life. Whenever we had to draw in class, I had to do those letter things over and over again. I was like in 6th grade going A, because my handwriting was so bad. When I got into art class, I could appreciate art, but when I made it wasn't that great. Vibe coding, I think, like, lets you go from idea to the desired outcome without have to deal with the code underneath. If you do know more about the code, it is definitely beneficial. If you understand how things work within web application, it is really beneficial, because what you don't want is put something out there that breaks, and you'll find out once you start coding, vibe coding, that sometimes something will break and the language model cannot solve the problem. And eventually we'll talk about that too. How do you trouble? I'll do a session on troubleshooting while vibe coding, and some things that I've learned that can help you when you get stuck. So one thing I should mention, that like when it comes to vibe coding, what I found personally and what I've witnessed in others is that the big problems with it are inertia. Everything you're used to doing in life requires a lot of upfront work to get the result. And so you're sort of programmed that way. So when you go to approach it and you're like, oh, I don't know how to get started, this is one of the technologies that's ever come along that lets you just try. And the cost of trying is very little. So the cost of learning is very little. One problem you'll run into is a lot of times they will set up quotas and things called like tokens or credits. And it's an arbitrary unit. So my recommendation is, when you're on the front end of the learning curve, is you try to find the platforms that either have unlimited or really high limits, or you do multiple platforms, so that you can bounce across them while you're learning and not have to worry about racking up a big bill. But it's the first technology that in my life that's come along that way, where you can really produce quality results without having to invest a ton. But we're internally wired to worry about the cost. We're internally worried that, what if I make something that's broken? Well, so you can fix it, or you can start over and try again, write a better prompt. Component library. All right. So I'm going to talk over some of these and have little like drawings you can see. So you got foundational ones that we'll talk about. You got components for doing content. You got interactive ones, display, e-commerce, mobile, and advanced. So these are sort of the building blocks you might imagine for a page. And you've seen them, like every page has them, especially these foundation ones. You got, header, and the header usually has navigation. A lot of times they just call the header navigation. There is a type of HTML called semantic HTML, which I highly recommend using. I recommend you ask the AI to output it as well. But semantic HTML is nice because you will literally call a header a header. You literally call a nav a nav, or whatever. It's a lot more human readable, and I think in the long term more maintainable. You have a hero section. That's usually a section that's supposed to sort of draw your attention. A lot of times the very first thing after the nav bar, or the very first thing on a page, will be a hero section with some kind of call to action to grab your attention. Why are you on that website? And you'll see, even though I didn't ask for it, almost all of the language models that I did with my test prompt, did that. You got footer, which usually tends to be like links, social media links, legal things, your privacy notice, your terms of use and all that. They'll usually wind up in the footer. You got sidebars, a lot of times wind up being used for another form of navigation, usually within you're already in the site. And you all have seen this. Every website sort of behaves this way. And you got components for content. So you're providing content on the web page. Might be a block of text, might be an image or an image gallery, might be an embedded video player. You might have a blog post that has a bunch of snippets of the blogs, and you click on it and it does the full-blown blog article. And you got interactive ones. You might have a contact form. It's a popular thing to have on a website. That's a good way to have customer relations, is having that contact on there, asking them, you want to get a hold of us for whatever reason, enter here, and you can manage it. And eventually we'll talk about what you can do with that kind of information to boost your sales and improve your engagement with your customers. And you have buttons or call to action things, click here, buy now. You've seen them on the website. It's usually the thing with the most attention grabbing when you hit a website. You get a search bar, helps you navigate and search the website. You might have links for social media, but you might also have feeds that show your social media. Like content for displaying things. A sort of way to more organized content. So you might have cards, or little self-contained chunks of text. You might have tables that can contain tabular data. Sometimes they're interactive. You can sort and filter and stuff on them. You have charts and graphs that are, like they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. A good chart or a good graph can convey far more information than text in the same amount of area. And then you got like testimonials. That's a big one. Social proof. We're humans. We're designed. We grow up interacting with other humans. Those testimonials, if they're well done, can be powerful. Sometimes they're complete BS, and you'll see that as you generate these websites. A lot of times it'll automatically throw in like placeholders, and you can prompt so that it doesn't do that. But it might know you have a testimonial section, so instead of doing that ipsum lorem, it'll do like Johnny Smith from Ohio, says this is the best product ever, and you're like, what? Where'd he get this? I don't know anybody by that name. Then you got e-commerce. That's another big subset of the web. You might have a product catalog. You might have a shopping cart. You might have a checkout form and a payment gateway. Those are all big components. These, as you see as we're going along, some of these components also become integrations. So a lot of times, if you're building a website, doing your own code for a catalog or a shopping cart or a form or a payment gateway, these sort of things are more complex. This might be where you start using an integration or using a third-party application to hand it off to it to complete the sale. There's just a lot of regulation and complexity around those things, and you don't want to lose a sale, and you don't want to have somebody wind up being defrauded because you had a security issue. You got mobile ones. There's a lot of people that design for mobile first. There's a large percent of web content that's consumed on a mobile device, so it's not a bad idea to design that. You have mobile menus, sometimes called hamburgers. If you go from a website down to a mobile app, the first thing it'll do is it'll collapse the nav bar with all the buttons down into a hamburger menu, and a nav that pops out. You might have like touch areas, and you might have like the navigation moves to the bottom of the screen to be closer to the thumb, for when you're using a mobile device. And a big thing is this whole idea of being responsive. It scales and rearranges the page to be the most functional for the size and the dimensions of the screen. Then we got more advanced components. You might have embedded code like HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. You might have, as I mentioned, API integrations, application programming interfaces. That's where you're using something somebody else wrote, and pulling a resource, pulling a query, storing information, you name it. You have database connections, and the more you move towards a web application from a website, the more you're going to be looking at some kind of database. And you have analytics. You're going to want to know how your site's performing. You're going to want to know how your sales are performing. So you might have features for doing that. And the AI understands those. Again, sometimes it makes sense to write it your own. Sometimes it makes sense to pull something off the shelf. So you got something that works. If it's your business, your livelihood, sometimes you are better off using something third party or pulling it into your application. All right. So then you're taking, those are the pieces. And now we're taking these pieces and we're going to build a page with an intent, a page with a purpose. And how do you prompt to get that? So say you got a business homepage. Look on the right here, you'll see at the top it has your header with your navigation, your logo, and some kind of call to action like sign in, sign up, buy now, whatever. And then you'll usually have that call to action, that hero at the top that has a compelling headline. You want to grab them in the first few seconds to keep reading that page. And then maybe you start talking about some of the features or, what are your best products or best features of your product. And then you do something like the company is great, some social proof, something that says, other customers have used that product. It's a good product and they're willing to test it. Trevor, is this something we can do while you are speaking? Well, yes, we will in a minute. If for the impatient, let's see here. Hold on. Wrong page. Oh, it's going to refresh on me. Where There we go. There we go. If you have access to an AI code builder, this one has a free. I'm gonna let me do it a little. I'll pop some of these links in here. Pick one of your choice, and I'll paste the prompt and play with it yourself. Here's Lovable. Oh, what is it? Something popped up and made it so I can't. There we go. There we go. This is lovable.dev. And then we'll do bolt.new. Most of these pretty much all of these, especially if you have. I'm gonna take one on. I think that was a bad idea to try to pop all those pages. I'll just read off the URLs there. All right, vibe coding. We're over embraces the vibe and trust the AI to handle. That's not bad. Can somebody type and say if they can still hear me? Because my computer sort of locked up right there when I started browsing these other websites. Is he frozen or just me? All right. All right, can you guys hear me? I'm gonna let's see here. How can I reset this live? Tell me when you can. Tell me. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Oh, you can? All right, great, awesome. All right, I'm not gonna make that mistake again. So I tried popping like browsing a bunch of heavy websites all at once, and I think I overloaded it. So go to bolt.new or lovable.dev or easysite.ai and just have the page open. You can start playing with it if you want, like log in, and it'll bring you to a prompt that looks like where is it? It'll look like, which one's safe? Oh, there we go. Kind of like it'll have like a text box in the bottom. Just get to that point, and we'll all try a prompt in a minute. All right. So I'm almost to the point where we're going to start playing anyhow. All right. If we can still hear me, I'm going to start talking. So like type to make sure you can still hear me. Sort of paranoid now. All right. So you got an e-commerce page. It's got a layout. You're used to these. You see these pages all the time. It'll have a main image, it'll have a main product, have thumbnails and reviews. It'll have a detailed product description. So a page like this is designed to convert visitors. People are just viewing the page. Choose the Ethernet cord rather than Wi-Fi for better connection. Oh yeah, I will next time. Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I'll try that next time. And we'll talk about some of the keywords in a minute. But like some of the words you can use in your prompt that are very powerful to produce an output to make the page more effective are things like a sales focused website, or the one I use all the time is high converting. You might not be familiar with what high converting is, but the AI does. And what that means is it's been tuned. It has the features on the page to try to turn a browser into a customer, or at least to collect their customer information. Persuasive is another word. Blog magazine, again, same thing. You've seen a layout like this. Most blogs look very similar to this. The keywords you might use for that might be user engaging or shareable or SEO optimized. Search engine optimization is kind of going through a big flux right now because of AI web searching, but it's still very effective. How do you make sure your website winds up being most searched, and understanding how the search engine is ranking your site, taking your site and doing with it that it winds up higher in the rank. And there's tools you can use for that. And you got a SaaS app you're used to that. If you use an online app, again, you might use high converting. You might say sales focused. You might say trust building. These are things, the first impression that you want to get across. You want to build trust. You want to have the website focused on sales. You want it to be highly converting. And it could be an educational one. You might be user engaging or interactive. And again, these patterns here are what you've seen all over the web, and especially with the most successful learning management systems. Community forum, same thing. You want something that's community building, interactive, you can reuse it. So here's where I'm going to talk about this. So high impact intent words. So you got, like I said, conversion, trust, visibility, engagement. So high converting, lead generating, sales focused, call to action optimized. Those are all in that direction. They want to convert you. They want to perform well to turn visitors into customers. Trust building, credibility building, secure, transparent. Whatever you think is the most effective thing for your target customer is what you're going to want to tune the page to and tune the prompt to build the page to. Visibility, SEO optimized, shareable, link worthy, high traffic. Do they bookmark your page? Do they share a link to your page because they saw something interesting? And those things you can measure even when you build the page. User engaging, interactive, retention focused, delightful. All right, so I'm just going to cover these. These are high level things. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, so we can start getting into the eye candy. But other aspects you're going to work with is look at fonts for performance, fonts to produce the look and feel that you want. It is an art to on itself. You can search for all kinds of guidance. You want it to be a compatible font. You want it to help convey the message. Cascading style sheets. There are a lot of frameworks in use there. Some platforms default to a framework. Some of them allow you to change to a different framework. In my case, a lot of times I'll use the AI Builder to build a page and then convert it into something I can use on WordPress. So then I usually do that by having it produce vanilla CSS. So not using a framework. What's some things? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. What's some things? Oh, that I have coded, or that everyone's coded. Mostly web pages, a few web applications like educational stuff. I'll share it down the road. I'll show you the page that I'm literally building right now for this group for the landing page. Larger applications, I think the tools are difficult, at least the ones I have access to produce really complex things. Once you get too big of a code base, most of the consumer level tools start having issues. And I'm on my learning curve too as well. We'll talk about it later, but it's really easy to get over greedy when you start vibe coding. You ask for something, it produces or overproduces, and you're like, well, that was cool. I wonder how much I could ask for. And suddenly you've got a messed up code, and you got to learn, how to manage that, how to control that. Some of the tools are learning to help you do that too. They'll create more frequent stop points and ask you, is this what you really want along the way? JavaScript, same thing. You got vanilla JavaScript or frameworks. Then you got integrations. Like I said, at some point, some parts of their website you might want to use a third-party service on, or pull an open source project out there to use rather than write it all from scratch. All right, so into the demo time. The tool that I'm going to use is EasySite. It's my personal favorite because I can just bring my own key, and it has a lot of features that other tools don't have that I think will work well, long-term managing a website. It's not perfect. None of them are perfect. They all have their issues. They all are very dependent on your web connection. They're all very dependent on the language models that they connect to. Almost all of them use Anthropic. And Anthropic goes down, the tool goes down. All right. So, sort of what's the cycle of like prompting? And so I would say you develop your prompt, and then the AI is going to analyze that prompt, and then it's going to, crank it out, give you a preview, and then you're going to sit back and try to tweak it in the process. Oh, that's nice. Oh, you mean like during the session here, you're building a Lovable app, or you're in general, like you have a big project you're working on? I think I misread that. I said, okay, big project. Lovable is pretty awesome. Yeah, a lot of people are really doing good work with writing applications in Lovable. It's interesting what it did in this one. You'll see this. I'll show you the demo in a second. So then deployment, and you push it out and they have a live URL. And usually you can sort of do that sort of versioning where you tell it when you want it to replace whatever is the production version. So the prompt that I use, and I did not spend a lot of time writing this prompt. This was just off the cuff. I did use like a little tool that I'll show you guys that I'm working on. Like I built while I was doing this, because I was like, how do I take the way I prompt in my head, and I'll turn it into a forum. So it'll kind of give you guys, if you don't have experience, maybe a tool you can use to prompt from. So it cranked out. I did that, a crude version. And I said, I want a landing page for my Vibe Code Circle community group that should be engaging and inviting. My audience is anyone interested in vibe coding, from building web pages, websites, and web applications, and even content development, and integrating vibe coding into their business processes, and focus on making the page high converting, trust building, secure and transparent, and SEO optimized and shareable and link worthy, and communication building. And design should be inspired by Lego color schemes. So I was like, I always try to throw something in there to try to like, how am I going to give it a flair? And I thought, if I'm looking at a community site, those bright Lego colors, to me that would attract me. If I land on a site and it's all dull grays and dark blues or whatever, it might be a turn on. But light colors with light bright colors might be something to draw you in a little better. But I added this extra thing here, and I always add that on especially with a new project. I said, finally, document everything in a project requirements document using Markdown format. What does that mean? So when you enter this prompt, the language model is sort of going to do planning on what it's going to do. It's going to develop a plan. And it's going to keep that plan in its head. It's going to produce your output. And during your session, it might remember the plan. But if you go back another time, or you start a new like thread to work on a project, it might not remember the plan. And so if you want to maintain that plan, a project requirements document is one great way to do it. So, and telling it up front to just draft it right off the bat will save you a lot of time. So you don't have to write it yourself. You don't have to do it in arrears. It'll just crank it out the first time it runs. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to walk you through the tools and what they output. So this first one is the Easy Site one. And see, I didn't cheat. There's one prompt. That is the prompt. Right. I said PRD. Pretty snazzy page. It's got some animations, right? It looks like it sort of said, okay, well, these folks must be code nerdy plus code plus AI. That's pretty cool. I think it's pretty, you'll see that it pops some colors and created gradients. Find with Anthropic, it's almost an anime pattern at this point. It's really fond of gradients, and it can get overwhelming after a while. A little bit of gradients is okay. And here's these sections that we talked about, right? Like features. You got another, like hero, call to action, community perks. And it sort of made this is like I was telling you, it made it up. 24/7 support. I hate to break it to you. I probably won't have 27 support right off the bat. 150 active projects started. It sort of made this up as placeholders. So sometimes that's a little annoying because when you gotta use the site. And I'll show you something cool in it. So that's one. Um, has a nice looking footer, has some animations. That had money you would have to pay a web developer to produce it would be a lot. Something especially this high quality. All right, so let's go on to the next one. So this one I got connection lost. You guys hear me okay? Give me another confirm because I'm seeing pop-up alerts. Type if you can hear me. And I'll keep moving though, and I'm looking for your note. All right, so this one I thought was very nice. Same prompt again, and it sort of did. It completed the prompt. It told me what it was thinking along the way and what it completed. And here's that markdown, that project requirements document. Each of them did that. So primary goals, key performance indicators, design and user page structure and wireframe, content requirements. All right, awesome. And so it's all there. So when next time you pull this, or if you export it to another tool to do, because I use the word Lego, it stuck Legos all everywhere. It's a pretty nice looking site, but it's like it showed actual Legos. I mean, I could have prompted differently and said like Lego. Oh, I'm breaking up though. Let me see here. I don't think there's a lot. Let me see if I can. No, that's the best one I got. Next time I'll make sure I run it off of Ethernet. So it showed literal Legos way too much, which is kind of annoying. And it's all right. It's very nice. I mean, it's a nice business site. I have no doubt it would work well. I would have to tweak it probably just to change the images, if nothing. Some nice animations, hover effects, cohesive. I would call this cohesive. Nice hover effects, eye catching. Join now. Join our community. Watch demo. And join now. It's free. All right, and this is which one is this one? I can't even remember. It doesn't say in the URL. Like forum especially. So what I might do here, I might steal that. Another thing that you could do when you're prompting it is to give it examples. If you give it examples, it usually does a really good job. So I'm going to steal this. And let's save it. Save. All right, and I'm going to go. I'll go back to this first one because I know I got credits. And I will upload the image. Whew. There we go. And I'm going to say, please, I don't know. I'm polite to the prompt. I don't know why. Like this to the page and appropriate. It's about spelling most of the time because it'll fix it. Here pro hit low. I can't tell. Connection lost. It's very similar. There's parts I like about it. Like I like this gradient footer or whatever it is down here, call to action, hero area near the bottom. I like the contrast to the dark footer, with the colorful top. So hey, this is very cohesive page. And of course, here's the one I already showed you, but it's outside of the LLM. So this is the page that EasySight did. So let's see if it's done yet. So this is interesting. So like right now, it's showing you while it's working. A lot of them on the right here, it is like generating code when it's thinking right now. But when it gets to the point, it'll start showing you the code being written here. It's pretty interesting to watch. So while it's doing its thing, man, losing connection. Hopefully you guys. It's fine. Hold on. Just creating code. I think it's done thinking at least. Looks like it's still age. I mentioned earlier, while I was doing this, I thought, for that first prompt, how do you write a prompt if you don't know how to write a prompt? The best thing in the world, how to write a good prompt, is a. It's got a music thing that plays when it's done generating. Let's see where it's element. The best approach is to give it a picture, a better result. There we go. All right, so I'll do another live demo here, just so you can get an idea. I'm going to post this on the website when I get the website up in the next couple of days. It's just like some tools. I got a couple, like this is a simple builder, and then it's got one that uses a different sort of way of building prompts. And I'm going to go ahead and, all right, so what kind of website do I want to make? Let me think. How about a place that takes your kids to the movies? How about that? Everybody wants a date night, right? What if somebody started a business to take other people's kids, and instead of like a daycare, like you drop them off like at a movie theater, and they sort of corral the kids around. So here we go. All right, so I want a website for a business that specializes in taking other people's kids to the movies. It's like babysitting, but it's like babysitting, but the parents drop off the kids at a specific location near the theater, and afterwards tell the parents where to pick the kids up. It has subscriptions and bundle plans. What did I do? And bundle B-U-N. I lost my UN. Bundle plans. What else? It has sign up form and disclaimer form. Man, see all my spelling errors. Geez, how embarrassing. All right. So the spelling errors doesn't really matter. It understands. All right. So, all right. So this is for this kind of website. Like I think trust is going to be huge. Like nobody's going to drop their kids off of some shady service. They should be, so you want security. You want it to be sales focused, SEO, and I would say delightful. How about that? It should be delightful. So what kind of components? I'm not going to worry with the components. I'll let him try to figure out the components. Layout pattern. I think, I'll let it figure that out. Visual style. Do I want minimalist, corporate, creative? I think I want it friendly. What, friendly or creative? What do you want? What do you got? Somebody want to type, or is the lag too bad? I'll do friendly. All right. And then inspired by. So what's something I would say inspired by? What would inspire me to drop my kids off at the movies? Inspired by, what do you want to say? 19, this is probably horrible. 1950s movie going nostalgia. All right, it's probably horrible. We'll see what it produces. And then any constraints, like yeah, I'm not going to mention any constraints. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that prompt. So you see it built the prompt over here. Go ahead and copy that. I'm going to go back to here because I know I'm going to run a credits. And I got to do next. All right. So almost all these websites look very much the same like this. They have a prompt. They might have some options. Always pay attention to the options. This one has one called MCP tools, and search for, and yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and do that. Generate my website. So it's going to take a minute, obviously. Disney. You're right. That would have been